Hey everybody, we're finally getting to Queen of Hearts, a Twin Peaks fan film, part 2 and 3 reactions. Now, we're starting to really get the ball going. There's a lot that happened in both these parts. I'm going to try to assemble them in my brain and react to them. There's a lot to keep tabs on. This thing is moving pretty fast, and I'm assuming there's a lot more to come. We're really getting more of the background of Wyndham Earl, Caroline, and Cooper, which I've been very excited for. As I said in my last video, this is a story that I wanted to be told for a long time. It is the most fascinating of the untold stories of the original Twin Peaks series. Wyndham Earl always just seemed like a fascinating character to me. Caroline was always kind of a mystery of who was this woman? Why was she so important? Why did Dale take to her so strongly, especially with it being his partner's wife? And we're getting to see why, how, what happened. And we're getting to understand a little bit more of who Wyndham Earl is and his kind of dealings with the supernatural nature of the world, reality, all that stuff. And we're really seeing what kind of his downfall a little bit. Obviously, we're not there yet. There's still a lot of story to be told. We kind of know how things end for the most part, especially those of us who watched all of season 2. And I hope if you're watching Queen of Hearts, you've seen all of Twin Peaks to this point. But I think it's super interesting just to see the evolution of Wyndham Earl and the relationship between Cooper and Caroline, and why Cooper ultimately falls for her, which leads to a lot of problems, essentially. And how a lot of that parallels to his relationship with Annie and what Annie's dealing with. And it's really cool to see how these stories parallel in ways and how they differ, and how, one dictates the other. A lot like Cooper said in The Return, the past dictates the future. And we're really seeing that in action in real time, essentially. So that's probably the most exciting thing about these two parts, is just to see how these two events or these two situations are similar, how they're different, and how they affect these characters in the versions we are familiar with. And we get an introduction of a newer character, Dean, through Major Briggs, who is sent to basically help Annie break out, and they make a tulpa, I believe, so that, Annie is sitting in the hospital bed, despondent, kind of like what we get in the final dossier, or, The Secret History of Twin Peaks. She's kind of catatonic. And we know now, in the Queen of Hearts world, that she's off with Dean, trying to figure stuff out, kind of in hiding a little bit, until a plan forms, and a plan does form with Major Briggs and Dean. And it seems like things are starting to move. But meanwhile, in the past, with Caroline, Cooper, and Wyndham Earl, they're having a good time. They're really getting to know each other. Cooper and his new partner are really becoming buddies. They're hanging out with the wife, Caroline, a lot, and everybody's getting along. They're getting along fantastically. They're hanging out, doing all sorts of stuff, having a good time. But while they're doing this, Wyndham seems to be kind of going down one path, and Cooper's going down another, in the way of falling for Caroline, Wyndham Earl's wife, which obviously is not ideal. Is not a great situation to put yourself in, Coop. But this is what happens, and Coop really falls for her, and she's kind of she has kind of a very kind of eccentric personality, and kind of melds with Cooper's own, and he finds it endearing. And Wyndham is not the most attentive husband, and is kind of, again, in his own world, looking at the occult and the paranormal and supernatural, all that stuff. He's already getting into a lot of that. So he's kind of an absent husband, and Cooper's there basically watching her for him. And while he's doing that, they're having experiences of their own, and they're enjoying each other's company and talking. And Cooper's really falling for Caroline, and Caroline's falling for Cooper. And we're seeing how that happens in the Queen of Hearts universe. And it's very sweet. It's very intense. There's a lot of feelings. There's a lot going on with them. And on the side, Cooper and Wyndham, seem like a really good team. They're both super intelligent. They're both savvy. Obviously, Cooper's a little bit of a rookie in comparison to Wyndham, and Wyndham is going, he's going to the next levels of what, he believes is really going on in this reality, or, possible secondary. We don't know how far down the rabbit hole Wyndham is going yet at this time, but it's interesting to see how it's evolved and how it's affecting Cooper and Caroline. Caroline, saying that he goes away for these long periods of time, and she's fine because she has her own life and she has her own stuff to do, but it's concerning. But this time Cooper is there to really listen and be there for her, which is a big part of how they start falling for each other. So seeing those two really interact is getting, knowing what happens, you feel the tension in the scenes. You feel the romance, you feel the kind of enduring love of these two, but you know that Wyndham is out there stirring and he's aware of what's happening. It's not lost on him, but he's kind of in this fugue of like figuring out this supernatural world while managing this this thing happening with his relationships with his wife and his new partner, essentially. And it's putting Wyndham in a bad place, a place he, to be quite fair, put himself in one way. But, Cooper's, I don't think, also thinking very clearly at this point. He's kind of being overtaken by his emotions and not being the agent he's supposed to be, or he wants to be, or he eventually becomes. He's being kind of, he's like following his heart in this instance, which is an endearing thing about Cooper. But we know, especially with the Caroline and the Annie story, that it gets him into a lot of trouble when he gets involved with these people in these really extreme circumstances. So we're seeing a lot of that play out, which is very exciting to see how this story is unfolding. And there's a lot of callbacks, great soundtrack, especially during the Wyndham Earl scenes. He has a great record collection. And there's a dinner scene in part 2 that I thought was really interesting to see the three of them interact for the first time, and really see the new iterations, or the Queen of Hearts iterations of these characters interact and what they're bringing to the roles. And it's basically a pas de deux of eccentricity at that dinner table. Everybody's kind of putting on their own show in a way, but Wyndham Earl is probably the most laid back, but he also might be the most eccentric of the three of them, because he's out doing God knows what at this point. He's searching for the bigger mysteries already, which is why I think the three of them make a really cool team in one way, but also are kind of toxic in another, in which they don't really know how to deal with the intensity of emotion and stuff like that, and responsibility. So it's causing friction while also, making them kind of closer in a sense too. There's a lot going on with these characters. And then jumping forward to Annie's story, we get more Major Briggs, and Major Briggs basically telling Annie what to do, essentially, or kind of guiding her a little bit. And Annie's ready to figure things out. She's kind of tired of standing by. She wants to know what she should be doing, and what is the best thing to do right now. After some apprehension, of course, like why is Annie responsible for any of this? She didn't. She just came into town. She was, she worked. She was a nun, for Christ's sake, before this, and now she's kind of fallen into this world of the supernatural. And no small part thanks to Dale, who, again, when he gets involved with somebody, he kind of pulls him into his crazy world. And in part his fault, in part not. I don't think he really asks for it either, but he kind of got drawn in for a number of reasons. So it's interesting to see Annie kind of take on the mantle. She's the hero of her own story now, with the help of some of our favorite characters, Major Briggs, who we get the word that he's died a certain part in part three. So falling in line with what we know in the final dossier, things are kind of moving along. But she has the help of Dean, who she seemed to kind of be falling for a second, and at this moment, kind of has snapped out of it. Taking on a bigger world of responsibility on her shoulders. But the most exciting thing to see is the parallels between these worlds and what happens with Caroline and Cooper, and then knowing what happens with Annie and Cooper and seeing the fallout of that. But we know one story, at least in Queen of Hearts, in the Queen of Hearts world, we know how one story ends and how the other story continues. So it's going to be interesting to see how Caroline's story comes to a head, Wyndham Earle's story, and how the Annie story kind of interacts with that story, that point in time, and how things overlap, and see how she interacts with Laura Palmer, because it seems to be where she's going next. And she winds up in Laura's bed and gives her basically some instructions that Laura isn't so great about. But I'm really excited to see the next few parts. We're really digging in here. We're getting to see a lot of the dynamics at play. We're getting to see how these characters interact with this world, how each story kind of indicates the other forwards and backwards. This is where there's a lot of Twin Peaks stuff happening, and more in the way of how the story is actually being told, and less through actual going to the past, going to the future. Not yet anyway. I'm not sure what's coming, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of that. But just in the way we're going to the past and future via these similar but different stories, and kind of through Cooper and the women in Cooper's life, and Annie and Caroline, and how those stories interweave and are similar and different, and how those characters are similar and different. Obviously, Annie's a little bit more. I don't know. It seems like she has her shit together in comparison to Caroline, who's at this point in time a little bit frazzled and disoriented with what's going on in her life, and emotions are high in that part of reality and that part of time. But we're only moving forward, and we're only three parts in, so there's a lot more to go. I'm very excited to see the rest. Let me know what you guys think so far of Queen of Hearts, Twin Peaks fan film, in the comments below. I'll link to it if you're falling behind. I hope I didn't spoil too much. And yeah, let me know what you think. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff. Check out the film, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching.